I think that so many of our bodies are on fire. And I certainly think that the key to illness is inflammation. And it's that imbalance between our sympathetic and parasympathetic, or our fight or flight and our rest and recovery systems. Sorry, that's the doggy shaking in the
I
background.
could tell.
And so there's that imbalance between those two systems that trigger so much inflammation. And so I think so many of our bodies are on fire, and there are days that I feel more on fire than others. And I think that the key is to learn to understand the fire, what triggers your fire, and how to make it go away, or how to calm it. It may never go away, but maybe you can suppress it. And I think that's where that title comes from. And I think when after I started healing from and getting off medications, I started becoming like this crazy person. I was like, I have so much energy. I have all the stuff I want to do. I got to tell people about what I've done. So I started like doing triathlons and, challenging my body in different ways. And I was like, I gotta write this down.
On the Healthy Human Revolution podcast, Dr. Lori Marbas interviews nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests whose informative and inspiring stories will empower you with the knowledge to transform your life and health.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbas, and today I'm so excited to welcome my friend Dr. Monica Agarwal. How are you today?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to talk about your new book. The title says it all. Body on Fire. For those on YouTube, you can see that Dr. Monica Agarwal and Dr. Jyoti Rao. And I know your story intimately, this amazing human that you are, and your recovery story. But could you tell us a little bit about your background as a cardiologist and your journey to actually, I think, healing and freedom?
So thanks. So my story is always interesting when I tell it, because it changes every day I live. So I always sort of laugh about that. But I'm a cardiologist at the University of Florida, and so what that means is I'm a preventative cardiologist. So I focus on advanced lipid management and treating cardiovascular disease through aggressive lifestyle changes. And so I have a prevention clinic there, which we've fostered over the last 4 years since I've been there. And I also do a lot of research, and I do a lot of teaching. So I get to teach a lot of the future generations of medical students, residents, and cardiology fellows, which I really enjoy. So my path to getting here was a bit circuitous. I started out in Maryland, and after a cardiology fellowship, I decided that I had very little time to have my children, because my clock was ticking and I wanted to have 3 kids, and how is this all going to work out? And I started out with having 3 miscarriages, so I always tell people that no matter how much you think you're going to predict when you're going to have a child, or that your life is going to be a certain way, you just don't ever know. And I think if anything I've learned in the last 10 years is that there is no way to plan your life. and that's really, and I think that that's an important lesson for a person like me, and maybe some of the other people who listen to this. Because as a physician, we like to control a lot of things. We're very controlling. We tend to be very type A, and we just imagine, well, I go to medical school, I go to residency, I go to fellowship, and then I'm a doctor, and then I make money, and then and then I have my kids. Like, it just, in your head, you've created this massive outline because there's so much deferred gratification. But as a fellow in my 3rd year fellowship, and what you can call it, whatever you want, but a lot of us don't try to have children when we're training, because as women in subspecialty, for sure, it's not looked at well to get pregnant when you're a fellow or when you're in training, because then somebody else has to cover your job, and that never looks good. And maybe that's in our head, or maybe it isn't, or maybe years of always feeling like, as women, we were we always had to sort of be a certain way. It was always very difficult. So when I finished fellowship, I decided to have kids, and I got pregnant really easily, and lost them really easily. And that's probably one of the harder times in my life. I've had many hard times. And so I think that everybody, you said something earlier when we were just chatting about how so many times you've had so many lessons in your life, and sometimes you wish there were fewer. And, but I think I do agree so many times that these lessons are painful to have. I can tell you that some of my darkest moments were during those 4 years where I kept miscarrying. But I think that it really does make you stronger. So that wasn't the part of the story you wanted to hear, but you got that part.
Well, it's important. There's a lot of women who can convey and understand. I lost one between my first two. I totally get that. That's very painful.
It was very painful. It was one of those things where I had this male OBGYN who was lovely, but he he said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You can get pregnant again as soon as you are ready to lose one."
Oh, wow.
People are funny. People are funny. So ultimately, when my first child came, I was so happy. I mean, I was over the moon. And, there was nothing, people talk about the terrible twos. I didn't feel those twos because I was working and had these kids, and all I wanted to do was be with my babies.
Mhm.
And so anyone who knows me knows that everything is about the kids. And so I had 3 kids in 4 years. So I had to sort of had a short time frame. So I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a baby. And so I always joke about how there were times when I'd come home from a full day of work and my breasts were huge because I needed to nurse, and the baby needed to be fed, and the 2-year-old was in my arm and my 4-year-old's on my foot. And so that's usually, there were many days like that. And so everything was crazy and fun, but almost too much, right? Because you 3 kids, a full-time job. I was, the fun part of it is that yes, my life was great, but there's always another side to it. And the other side was I was overtired. I was sleeping 4 hours a night. I wasn't taking care of myself, and instead I was making baby food and pureeing sweet potatoes, but I was sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night because I can handle anything, right? And so I went through a lot of this sort of very inflammatory behaviors where I had a lot of sympathetic tone. I was overdriven, totally overstimulated, and I broke. And so about 4 months after I had baby 3, I started manifesting migratory joint pain. The short version is I went from being an avid runner to being almost totally disabled. I couldn't even climb the stairs. I was told I probably wouldn't be able to practice cardiology the way I usually do, which is I do a lot of procedures, and I probably wouldn't do all those. So within a month and a half, I went from being super mobile to being completely small and sick and broken. And I was diagnosed with advanced rheumatoid arthritis. I was told that if I didn't get on medications within a week of my diagnosis, that my prognosis would be very poor because my markers were so high, and that I had a very destructive course ahead of me. So I did. And, the fact that I was told all that in my first visit, you can imagine how that must have felt. And how a person, and you learn a lot as a physician about how not to be. And I certainly have learned so much about how to be as a physician, how to talk to patients. And, I was always, good with patients, but I don't know, but I was able to put it in a box and then walk away. But now I really feel when I give these patients a plan and I give them a medicine, I really think about it 14 times, because when I was started on medications that could kill my liver, or that would make me lose my hair, or had all these side effects, I didn't, when you start getting medicines, you start realizing, well, the doctor will say, oh, well, you're 1 in 1,000 risk of getting this. But as the patient, you hear, I might be that 1 in 1,000. And I didn't fully understand that until I myself had become the patient. So after months of really bad side effects and losing a lot of hair and feeling lousy and feeling good because my joints were better, feeling bad because I had every side effect. And, I was laughed because people were like, you lost all your weight. You look amazing. And I was like, yeah, I look amazing because I can't eat because I'm nauseous all the time.
Wow.
So I went through a lot of that, a lot of emotion, a lot of anger, sadness, but then I got better. And how did I do it? So sort of a year after I got sick and was on medications for about a year, maybe 7 months or so, I met a woman who decided to just came to my office and said, I always think about like why things happen in your life. And I was doing this community event and she said, she wanted to come and teach people about nutrition. And I was like, I got enough people. And I was probably rude and was like, yeah, I got this. We got this. And she goes, well, let me do your profile. Let me do your profile because maybe I can help you. And I was like, I got this, I got this. I'm healthy, and I sort of laugh and I always look back at that moment and think I was like not healthy. And so, and so I always laugh about that. So she said, so she did, and it changed everything. It changed my whole life because I started understanding that there are things that you can do in your life that can affect how you live and how you do. And, I think the fully, like it's taken me now almost 5 or 7 years of study to understand that why that is. Like you have your genes and you can't change your genes. Like I have what I was supposed to have. I was supposed to have rheumatoid arthritis for whatever reason. It doesn't run in my family, but I had that genetic code. But the epigenetics or the reason or the other things around your genes, you can change. And so I think that's a fundamental concept that I think people need to understand, which is that you can't maybe change what you get from your genes, but you can change your epigenetics, the way your body responds to those genes, the expression of an illness, and then potentially suppress those genes. And so that's the area that I'm most interested in. So I spent years learning about it, trying to understand it, trying to heal my own body and just going all over the country, trying to study and learn about it. And I changed everything. I changed the way I ate. I changed the way I slept. I changed the way I practiced, moved, everything. And then about a year after diagnosis, I started getting better.
Wow.
And about 2 years after diagnosis, and sometimes I'm off my time, I came off all of my medicines, and now I'm 7 years off medication. So that is one of the greatest parts of the story. But, every day is not perfect. There's some days I get nervous, just like everybody. And, I get a lot of patients contacting me on a daily basis and say, well, how did you do it? And I like to emphasize that it is no rodeo. It is hard. And every day you have to watch what you do. And some days you'll break down and do things not necessarily the way you really wanted to, or you broke and went back to some of your old ways. And then you feel it. And so, but for me, I feel like the changes that I've made along this course are so important. I never want to go back to that place where I crawled up the stairs. I never want to be that person. And so I will do everything I have to do to stay healthy. And so because of that, now I live that way, and I practice that way, and I practice cardiology that way, and I teach that way. And so that's the long version of the story, or maybe the middle version, because that's where I am, and that's what I do. I practice now a lifestyle-based approach to healing patients, and I try to heal patients the way I heal myself, but also to remind people that it's hard. It's hard to heal, it's hard to get better, but it's not impossible. And that I always tell people, we can't choose what we get, but we can choose how we respond to it, choose what we do to make it better. And that's how I like to practice.
Absolutely. But there's so much here we could talk to, but I want to go back just a little bit, because the story of climbing up the stairs, could you frame that in why you were climbing up the stairs? Because I think that's really important.
That was probably the hardest day of my life to date, is that day. So there was a day, I think I was 5 months postpartum with baby number 3. It was like 4 a.m. And that's when I set my alarm. And so 4 a.m, I set my alarm because in order to leave the house by 6, or 6:30 to get to the hospital by 7, I had to get up at 4. So I would get up at 4 and then I would go downstairs. I remember hobbling down the stairs that day because I had, I felt like there was ice or glass cutting my feet. That's what it feels like when you have joint pain in your feet. It feels like somebody's cutting your feet. Like I changed my shoes 3 times during this process because I couldn't figure out why everything hurt my feet so much. So I remember that day because I was hobbling down the stairs because I had to turn the alarm off to then let the dogs out and then start the day, which means get the dogs out, feed the dogs, make my lunch, make the 2 older kids have to go to daycare. So they had to have their lunches made. And then I had to, what else? Then I would have made my lunch and then I'd have to go upstairs and feed the baby. And so I remember this day in particular because I was downstairs and the dog barked, which then woke up the baby and the baby cried. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to wake the other 2 babies up. And I'm not ready yet. So I started running up the stairs, that sort of gut reaction to be like, oh my God. And I couldn't get up. I couldn't even get close. And I remember that day so well because I crawled up the stairs because that was the only way I could get up. And my husband found me at the bottom of the crib crying because I couldn't get the baby out of the crib. And I couldn't get her out of the crib because she was just crying and my milk was coming out and I couldn't reach her. And I remember that day so well because I remember that was the day I really knew I was in trouble. Like I knew I was sick.
I remember the first time I ever heard you tell that story, and I was just like, I can't imagine a more painful experience as a mom to be this close and unable, and it's just, and your body's reacting, right? Like breast milk and the baby's crying. I just wanted to hug every time you say that story.
Oh, that's nice of you. I'll take that virtual hug.
Virtual hug, especially nowadays. But
No,
yeah.
I mean, it really was. It was a hard time, and that's why I think. But I never want to go through, and I never want that moment for anyone. But I'm so different because of it. I probably wasn't that as nice as I am now, or I probably was less sensitive and understanding of other people because, everything was about sort of like, okay, I have to do this, like everything had to fit in a box. And it's taken me 10 years to learn that there are no boxes. Like we can't fit in boxes. None of us fit in. I certainly don't. I know I have jagged edges and a lot of us do. And so
some of us are more blobs than jagged edges. That seems to be I just got to miss the whole box. All their stories. But and speaking of your story, and then you wrote the book Body on Fire, which is such a beautiful title, and it's actually a really nice, it's a very attractive cover, actually.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. And so what was your inspiration to write the book? And then you have a partner as a co-author, and tell us how that came to be.
Yeah, so we came up with the title Body on Fire because I think that so many of our bodies are on fire. And I certainly think that the key to illness is inflammation. And it's that imbalance between our sympathetic and parasympathetic, or our fight or flight and our rest and recovery systems. Sorry, that's the doggy shaking in the background.
I could tell.
And so there's that imbalance between those 2 systems that trigger so much inflammation. And so I think so many of our bodies are on fire, and there are days that I feel more on fire than others. And I think that the key is to learn to understand the fire, what triggers your fire, and how to make it go away or how to calm it. It may never go away, but maybe you can suppress it. And I think that's where that title comes from. And I think when after I started healing from and getting off medications, I started becoming like this crazy person. I was like, I have so much energy. I have all the stuff I want to do. I got to tell people about what I've done. So I started doing triathlons and, challenging my body in different ways. And I was like, I gotta write this down. So Jyoti has always been a good friend of mine. And actually, she'll tell you this funny story. The first time I told her that I was going to do a triathlon, I was still nursing. And, anyone who knows me knows that I'm well endowed. And then when too much information for your audience.
No. Well, we could be talking.
Well,
I understand.
Yes. And so, she'll tell you this funny story about how when I was nursing, let's just say I was very well endowed. And she said I would tell her, I'm like, I'm going to do this triathlon. And she was like, you're crazy. You're going to start running and those things are going to hit you in the face.
When I was nursing, I had to wear double sports bras when I was running. Like it just hold them in.
You got to suck those babies in. And so, so anyway, those are the funny stories. And
that's my favorite part of the interview, by the way. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
I know. These are the funny stories. So that's how we met. And that's the relationship we have is Jyoti and I. She calls me out and I call her out. She's like my other sister, sister from another mother. So I always sort of laugh about that. But yes, it's been a good experience and a good ride. But that's why we wrote the book. I wrote the book. Honestly, I told her that the reason I wrote this book, and my daughter, when she hears this, she always starts tearing up. But I wrote this to honor my kid, because I was really not that, I was so angry after I had baby 3. Like I kept thinking if I hadn't challenged, if I hadn't messed with fate, and how many people are like, why are you having a 3rd kid? You already have a boy and a girl. And I thought, oh God, like I messed with the forces of nature, or I shouldn't have had a 3rd kid. And, I get angry. Like if I hadn't had a 3rd kid, none of this would have happened. It was such a dark place. And, and I always, I write about this in the book, and I always say that the reason I wrote this book and the reason I am better is because of her. Because so you always see the negative at the time, right? You see like, well, I got sick, but if I hadn't gotten sick, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have healed, and I wouldn't have learned how to heal, and so I think that's the key. Like if you don't, sometimes you have to fall to learn how to get up.
Mm-hmm.
I know, sorry to be cheesy, but it's true.
No, I think it's really important. But what I find that's so sad is those who continue to fall, but never think to ask, okay, why are you here, this experience, and what can I learn from you? And I think they miss the boat, and they can make different decisions and better choices, or maybe grow and be, take on these things in a different light. And, I have found that through all of the humble pie I've had to eat multiple times, it just makes me much more, I think, reaching out to people and touching them, even more wanting to be that connection with people and just really understand what they're going through, because it's like, I can so relate. I've been, and it's just a beautiful journey to be with people and to experience and share with them. But I think I totally understand from that said. But when you talk about, I love that too, because the title of, my gosh, I got to put on the old lady glasses. It's utterly insane.
It's okay. It'll give me a chance to call Asha to get me a charger. Hey,
Asha.
Please can.
And so turning 50 lets me in my old lady glasses, but it's how my daughter saved me. I think that says it all, what you just described. Amazing. But you have other
favorite chapter.
Yeah, it's a beautiful chapter, and you have so many really interesting, cool chapters through here. What are some of the ones that you feel are the most powerful and impactful for readers or your patients, and maybe why you were inspired to write a certain type of chapter?
Sure. So I really like, I like the chapter where we talk a lot about the sympathetic system, which is chapter 1, and really just talks about why the imbalance that we have between supply and demand and resources. And I always tell people it's like your iPhone, like or your phone, when it goes to 3%, you run, or your computer, you run to get a charger for your phone, but you never learn to charge yourself. And so much of the time is that we're always on, we're always taking demands out on our body. I certainly know this very well about pulling and taking so much out of yourself. key is I think we forget to think about all the areas that we can provide back to our body. So I really like that chapter because I think it helps people understand that you have to allow your body to heal. You have to give yourself time to recover.
Mm.
The other chapters I really like I really like the section on elimination, and I like the section on add back. And so what I find is life. So that's what I like. So I like the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system chapter. I really like the elimination chapter because I think it's important to realize that there's things that we're doing to our bodies to hurt it, but then there's certain things we can do to add back. So I really like that. And a new chapter we added that was not in our first book, which was Jyoti's suggestion, which was a positivity chapter. So I really like that chapter because I do feel, and so much of what we talk about in our clinics is self-love and loving self and loving the community. And in the time of COVID in particular, it's really important for people to remember joy and happiness. And sometimes I'll ask people in clinic what gives them joy. And it's interesting. A lot of people have trouble with that question. And sort of getting people to sort of journal and focus on the joys and the things that they have that are great in their life. I think that's super important because again, if you always think negatively or that things aren't good, you're just putting so many demands on yourself and it's too much. I mean, sometimes I make people look in the mirror and I say, what is it about yourself that you love? And I'll tell you what I see. I see you have beautiful eyes, or I like the shape of your nose, or I like the way you smile. And sometimes that's really important to just remember how much you have, because when you have that positive feeling, you're more motivated to change too.
Absolutely. When I think that's really interesting is that people really struggle with seeing the positive because it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. When you think negative and you expect things to happen that are negative, your brain's like, oh, okay, let's make those things happen because it's going to want you to move forward in whatever direction you're thinking. So that's really true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's funny, I've had patients, I kind of did a similar thing. It's like, I need you to tell some type of positive affirmation by looking yourself in the mirror every day. And if it's as simple as, I love you to yourself, it makes people really uncomfortable. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. It's interesting. I give out a survey in my clinic, and one of the questions on my survey is, are you happy? And 9 out of 10 people say they're not. And I think that makes me realize that there's so much, it makes you realize how much sadness there is in the world and how much we all bottle up our sadnesses. And I think the importance of community and love and remembering the things that are good and give joy are really important when you kind of hear that so many people have so much sadness.
Yeah, and it is really unfortunate, but I think that community aspect is so important, be it your family or your friends, your neighbors, because we're just so disconnected now. And it's funny that I had an interview before you, and Kristen had written a book. Oh goodness, Baby Got Back in Her Pants. It's really funny. It's about losing weight, plant-based diet. She's done a fantastic job. But we were talking about, mothering and stuff. And I was like, it's interesting. She mentioned, she goes to the playground with her 6-year-old and all the parents are sitting on the benches looking at their phones. And there's literally people with children similar ages right there next to you, and you're not connecting. You're on social media. And now there's worries, there's interesting studies on women who breastfeed and they're not, having that eye-to-eye connection and love. And, because when a baby's breastfeeding and you're just enjoying them, other than the pain, enjoying the moment, because it can be very painful, and you're just like, you're falling in love, right? And that love lasts and lasts. And but I'm thinking, what about those mothers who are on the cell phones and scrolling and not connecting? But the connecting is really, really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm with you. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is walk around the hospital and take pictures of everybody on their phone. And so
Ah,
like I'll go to the bus stop and I'll take care every single person is on the phone, like when I walk by. And so I have these pictures where there's 10 people on their phone. And, I think, we've lost a little bit of ourselves in this whole digital world. And,
mm,
a conversation probably for another day, but certainly an issue, and one that my kids are in that age group now where I want them to have phones, but I don't really want them to have phones. Like I need to be able to get a hold of them, but
mm,
they're asking, but can I get social media? And like,
mm,
well, why would
mm.
I want you to have that? And then why would I want you to be affected by other people's perceptions of you? And
Yeah.
so anyway, again, I think that there's so much there, that you could tease out, like social media, the lack of community, that we're losing so much of that in this
Mhm.
day and age, and now with COVID. And so I do think that nurturing that is super important, and learning to sort of remind yourself what you love and love about yourself and love about the world. And
Mhm.
so I really like that positivity chapter.
Yeah, I think that's great. And just a little on the kid thing with the social media, we were very fortunate. So my kids were born in 94, 96, 98. So they're kind of on the cusp of as it was entering, but their early childhood wasn't inundated with it. But as
Sure.
they got older, I was on social media, which is probably not a good thing, but I was always very, very clear that if they were ever on social media, I will hunt you down. I will have all access, all passwords,
I will hunt
and
you down.
I will hunt you down and I will be on there watching what you're doing. And there's like, so now they're still, even at their ages now, they do not want to be on social media. They post on occasion. Like they're just like, and I think it was a blessing in the sense that I was a psychotic mom. It's like, hey,
Okay, well, that's given me impetus to be a psychotic mom. Like, okay, I can be crazy too. Well, they're like, because I do like to hear that. I do hear often, but so and so has social media.
oh,
I'm
I
like,
if I love that is if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I was like, listen,
well,
the
my
day
husband's
that I'm
very
so
good.
and so's mom, let me know, and then we'll have that discussion with them too.
Well, my husband is even funny. I mean, he's so funny. He'll go, "Oh, well, why don't you go live with that family?" I'm like, "Whoa."
That's awesome. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Well, I know I've taken up so much of your time. I apologize, but it's just I just love talking to you.
Yeah, it's been so fun. I've had a great time.
Absolutely. Well, where can we get your book? And here it is, guys, again, Body on
So
Fire.
Body on Fire, available on Amazon. It's starting to
Awesome.
get into the bookstores. It's on Kindle because a bunch of people from across international were looking for it, and so it's now on Kindle and
Awesome.
slowly getting everywhere. And hopefully we will, because I know this is going to be the next question, which is not maybe from you, but from the patrons, are when is the cookbook coming out? And 2021.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you got to tell us how to get started with the food. It's all the food, right?
I think so. I think you have to have the foundation, which is what this
Right.
book is. I think it's the
Yeah.
foundation to sort of make you understand, like, look, we got a problem. There's an up and a down. We got too many demands. We got not enough resources. Let's figure out how to even that out. There's these different things that will help you do it, and it gets people thinking about what they're doing in their lives to sort of
Right.
hurt their bodies and help them. And hopefully they'll hear our stories and hear my story and say, okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to end up like her, and be so sick like I was, and that, people will change. And I think, unfortunately, illness makes people change, but I'm hoping that people will say, you know what, I don't want to be that. I don't want to get that sick. I don't want to break down. And then we'll make the changes and do what they have to do, because there's so much to live for. There's so many great things. And as you and I spoke about it earlier, we got like 100 years of things we want to do. So we can't.
It's actually
Yeah,
more than 100 years. Like, can I borrow, like, I don't know, but can I keep the 50-year-old body as I move into those next 50? Yeah, we talked about that. But I think the really cool thing about your book is that you're breaking down some really interesting topics and looking into it. So people may not even realize that that's an issue, but then they may connect with something that you're speaking about here. And
I really like chapter
really
6
important.
too, because of that microbiome chapter, really
Oh,
talking about the gut. And we didn't get to talk about that, but
yeah.
that chapter was, I redid that chapter for this book. And because I feel like I've learned so much in the last couple of years. And I know that even from the day this was published to now, I've learned so much. Like, it's such an evolving area, is the gut biome, and actually doing these really cool studies that I'll have to tell you about at some point,
Oh,
where we're assessing the gut biome and different styles of diets. And it's fun. Like, it's
wow.
so fascinating to understand the gut. And I think the mechanism of how our body's healing, so much of it is through the gut. And I think really, even, stress hormones and food that we take in and sleep, they all have impact on the gut. So I think we're going to find some really exciting stuff out in the next 10 years about how the impact of the gut is. And that's why one of the questions on my survey is, how is your stool? People love it. They're like, why are you asking me this? I'm like, well, I want to know how your stool is, how many times you go, and what does it look like? And they're like, okay.
Oh,
Aren't you a cardiologist? I'm like, the only cardiologist that talks about poo. That's right. But I got
oh,
I got
yeah.
3 kids and 2 dogs. I'm very comfortable with poo.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I think any doctor, you go through medical school, you become very familiar with poop. But that's really funny about the poops, though, because every conversation has poop in it with me and my patients. So I have a family, and she said I could check, because it's such a cute story, because I
Okay.
said, can I share your story on the podcast, like, I don't know, 100 times? And she's like, oh, of course, of course. And so I started seeing her son, who's 5, and he was 4 when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
And so they came to see me, and we're transitioning from a very ketogenic paleo type diet, because that's what the cardiologist was. He wasn't doing well, thriving. So then they started with MASH diabetes, and they referred to me. By the way, he's doing really awesome right now. But
Yay.
anyway, but part of that transition, they have a 7-year-old, and she was having all these digestion issues, as you can imagine, switching over to a high fiber diet from a low fiber diet.
Sure.
And but what a little trooper. So we talked often, it's like mom and the whole family shows up. And we started talking about poop. And at first she was like, but then she just got really comfortable, and I happened to mention the chart and the Bristol chart and the poop chart, right? And so and her mom put one of those charts in the bathroom, because these are 5 and a 7-year-old. She's like, I'm not going to watch them poop, but I need to know what the poop is so I can. She's very analytical. She's run her own business. Mom is like on it. And she's like, she goes, so every time now the kids go and they go, Mom, I had a number 4, which is awesome. Or they'll tease her. They'll even go, Mom, I had a number 8. And she's like, are you serious? She goes like, no, Mom, I had a number 3. It's all good. It's like, so then one night she comes in, we're meeting, and because we meet fairly often, she has this mug, and it has the chart on the mug. I was like, she goes, Dr. Marvis, this is for you. I was like, oh my gosh.
Send me one of these.
I said, I must have. So I went on Amazon, I found that mug, and I ordered it. So the next time we met, so now every time we meet, like, we have our poop mugs together. But it's
that's
just
so great. I love that.
It's hilarious. But and now the family, when they're over, everyone wants to use my poop mug. I was like, this is a poop mug. Who wants to use a poop mug who's not a doctor? Like, come on.
I love it. I love it.
Oh my gosh. You need to get the poop mug and show it to your patients.
I think I'm going to have to get it. I'll have to do it on stealth. Like, I'll get it in the house, and it'll just show up, and people will be like, what are you drinking out of it? Like, what?
It's the special mug. And when you put, and if I put like, I use Ticino, and it's brown, and get some different colors going in there. It's a really interesting conversation.
I love it. I love it. Oh, Lori, it's always so fun to chat with you.
Yes, off the wall stories. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure everyone else is just going to go, okay, Marvis, never listen to this again. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Well, I'm not sure. I'm sure they're going to all be like, what happened between the two of you on that conversation?
Well, it's just, there's just some people you just totally enjoy talking to, and that is you, Dr. Aggarwal. I do so enjoy talking to you every time.
It's been really fun. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. And we'll touch base soon.
Absolutely. And everyone, just check it out. It's Body on Fire on Amazon, and we'll put the links. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe button and the alert button so you will be notified whenever we upload any new videos. On Monday, we upload the Healthy Human Revolution podcast. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find it on all the major platforms, such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. On Tuesdays, we upload the Doctor's In. This is where I answer your questions. Thinking of that, could you please comment below any questions you might have about health or wellness or any topics that you would like me to cover? Now, if you're looking for more resources on how to start a plant-based diet, sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, anything regarding wellness, we've got you covered. Check out healthyhumanrevolution.com. And again, thanks for watching.